Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're bringing you 10 rules we think you might miss in Frostpunk, the board game coming from Glass Cannon. This is a, first off, wonderful game. Second off, massive game with a ton of levers, functions, dials, and ways to die. I mean that you could literally lose in every conceivable fashion. You want the generator to explode? You can lose that way. You want to starve to death and have children be the sacrificial lambs of your punitive outpost? You can die that way. You want to send people on an expedition as your last hope for survival? You can die that way.
You can lose hope and morale. You can die that way. You can kill children in bed while they sleep. You can.
Do you want a giant storm, a blizzard, to envelop your little settlement so that all the structures that you've built to allow people to sleep and go on their merry way in the morning to suddenly collapse in a frozen fury of white outrage and frostbite? You can die that way.
You can also starve.
But in the process of dying that way, there are some rules that are worth double checking, going back over and making sure you're getting right, because this is a game that relies so heavily on the balance of function. And if you're missing some of these, you might find that your play experience, while still being a lot of fun, is also kind of unwinnable. This is a tight, hard, cutthroat game, and we want to help make sure you have the best, most winnable experience possible.
You're still not going to win, but we're going to help you get as close as possible.
We are unable to win ourselves, let alone help you learn how to win. But we're going to help you learn how to play nonetheless. All right, West.
So we have to start off with a very important thing about setup. One of the things that I had difficulty with setup was trying to figure out what a starting tile was, because there's lots of different tiles here on the board. There's near tiles. There are these things called far tiles.
You're just destroying everything.
Yeah, and then there's the hex tiles, which go around the outside, right? There's also the center tile, where this piece here in the generator is. And then there's something called a starting tile. Unfortunately, the starting tile is not the same size as these hex tiles. It's this very small dime-sized piece here called a starting tile. As long as you understand and know what this is, you're not going to have any trouble whatsoever. Don't be like me and waste 45 minutes trying to figure out exactly what the starting tile was.
Sounds very
Tip
grumpy.
number 1.
Perfect tip. Wow, amazing.
Perfect tip.
Wes, could you please hand me the iPad next to you for my first tip?
Yes.
My first tip is the fact that there is actually a decent companion app to go alongside this game. Now, it's not going to track or run the game for you, but what it will do is it will run your rounds, which is very, very helpful. So it'll run your rounds. It'll also run details on each one of these rounds along with stat breakdowns. This is probably one of the most helpful companion apps or companion cards you could have on hand. There's a lot of stuff you don't want to be double checking the rulebook. Instead, download the Frosthaven or the Frostpunk app. Literally the barcode's inside the box.
Yep.
And yeah, use it at least to run supplemental rules checks.
And the other thing that it's really good with is to help you remember exactly where you are in the scenario, because there's a lot of situations where you will think you've gotten one thing done, but then you've forgotten, so it's very, very handy. Highly recommended.
Follow that step by step. It's not going to steer you wrong. It's going to help answer a lot of your questions. Moving on from that,
we actually have out here the Dreadnought, which is an amazing piece as you're moving through the different scenarios. You'll have an opportunity to use. We're not going to spoil too much about it. But one thing I want to be very clear about is, regardless of whether or not you have the amazing mini, each piece of the Dreadnought is considered a small building. So, because you can get steel from the Dreadnought, it is not something that one of the gathering posts would be able to harvest for you. So you actually have to send someone into that area, get them to harvest each individual piece of the Dreadnought. Just be aware, it doesn't work with the gathering post.
One of the things that I think just requires you to make sure that you're conscious of your brain seeing it as this way is how the buildings, both through color coordination and the zones through regionality or distance from the spire, from the generator, affect or impact whether or not things are heated or cold. So as you're moving up this track, you're going to be using coal to generate and push up that mark. That is going to allow you to designate certain buildings and certain distances as warm and heated or as cold and frigid. For instance, if we have heated red buildings, which is the first thing we come across here, then every red building will be a warm action, even ones that are out here on the outskirts. Now, that's pretty simple, but if we push up where we've heated the outside rim, then even actions like gathering there will be considered heated as well. The complicated nature of this gets into a position where, for instance, you've heated your orange buildings and they're on the outside rim. That means the orange building is still heated even though it's far away. Or, for instance, let's say that you haven't heated your yellow buildings and you haven't heated your external outside rim. That's going to create it so that your yellow buildings are still going to be cold, or your orange buildings are still going to be cold. It's this little puzzle. You got to get your mind wrapped around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just important to pay attention to what is and what is not warm from every given season to every other given season.
So when people die, you have to lose a hope. You'll be increasing the corpse count, and then you'll be losing a hope. One of the important things to note is, let's say you have more than one hope currently on the board, and you have, say, a deactivated hope as well as an activated hope. If you wish, you can deactivate this hope here and leave both of these here on the board. You don't have to remove this deactivated hope if you don't want to. So in fact, a activated hope counts as removing 2 hope. So that when you start to kill children, you'll be able to actually go through and deactivate a hope and then remove 1 to just take the place of 1 child.
Keeping in line with the idea of what you lose when someone dies, over here on our med station, you will also knock down your sickness tracker by 1 because there's 1 less sick person. They expired. So keep that in mind as you cycle that as well. Talking about this middle of the board here still, though, the stuff you drop in this center coal archive. This is going to be a split dice tower. You're going to be adding coal to warm it up and heat up different regions and different types of buildings. And so you're going to be dropping cubes down this tower. You're only going to be dropping cubes down this tower based off of something Wes will go over in just a second, but based off of how much stress you've placed on the tower itself at the very end of the round. If and when you are putting coal in the tower in order to heat it up during the actual action phase of the gameplay, this coal is going to go from your resource over back into the normal general pool.
Yeah,
so
the bank.
You're not dumping coal that you're using at the moment directly inside of it. Instead, the coal that you drop down is representing stress, which is more than just the coal that you've added.
Exactly. So banking on that particular idea, moving over here to this board, on the right-hand side, you'll see how much coal it takes to get to this point with moving up your heat. On the left-hand side, you'll see what's known as the stress mark. So at this point, when you're actually going through this and you're doing the generator upkeep phase, you're going to be dropping in the coal that's actually the stress on the left-hand side, not the physical amount of coal that you put into the bank. Be very clear about that, because at the very beginning they basically match. It's 1, 2, 3, and then you go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but here on the left hand side it just stays at 4 for a very long time, goes back up to 5. So don't hurt yourself too quickly out of the gate with this upkeep mechanism, because this thing can be very brutal if you're not careful.
Yeah. Talking about how you actually expand out here onto the map, every build action you take with a meeple, where you mark it down here on your side player board, will give you the opportunity to do 3 full builds. So make sure you have the resources that you need before you commit to a single build action, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to continue going back, harvesting, and then re-spending a whole action in order to construct more buildings on the tableau. Along with that, if you ever want to just upgrade from level 1 all the way up to the 2nd level on the back of most of your building tiles, you're going to pay the resource cost double. Or if you're playing with Dreadnought, you're going to build it entirely with steel to get the free upgrade. So remember, 3 build actions, and you can immediately upgrade if you have what you need. If you have the resources to build it straight, or you have the initial cost paid in steel alone.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the other thing we're going to talk about here are the social dispute cards. Anytime that there is a red recycling symbol up on the top right-hand corner, it kind of matches this slot over here, which is your discard pile.
Basically, what it means is you're going to be activating the entirety of this board. So there's 3 different slots. I'm going to place some cards over just for show example. There's going to be some cards in your discard pile, some cards in your active deck, and then a set of these social dispute cards that are set over to the side, and one is always revealed.
Correct. So during this dusk phase, you're going to be pulling one from the actual deck, which is in the dead center. If it happens to have the recycled red sign on the top right-hand corner, this card is to be discarded from the game. But it does tell you to grab another social dispute card from the deck on the right-hand side and then shuffle the discard pile, your current draw pile, and the new card all together into one big pile.
You should only ever have one active social dispute in your deck, but that red circle, that red refresh circle is basically saying activate this board. Bring everything together and crunch them into the center. That's going to be important because you don't want to accidentally continue mixing those in or have too many of those social disputes in there. They really do make the game a bit painful from time to time. Let's go ahead and talk about the process of moving this mechanic system over here. This board is one of the more mechanically adjustable boards, specifically around the health of the location. So a few important notes, things that are good for you to remember. Your sickness can never go higher than the population that you have. If it ever does, you flip that token, meaning that the person that was sick just got increasingly worse. If it happens again, they start dying, your population, your sickness start going down. When someone dies, not only are you going to be dealing with all that chaos over there, you're going to be ticking down the population barrier. Every single meeple you have is represented by a group of people, not a representative of a single person. So your total population is not going to be represented in meeples until you cross a threshold of something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Around 8-ish people, you'll see it cross these bars. It's lower down, but you'll see it cross these bars, and that's when you'll actually gain a new meeple. There will be an upkeep phase where you decide to get that. If and when you cross over due to a death, the same thing's going to happen. You're going to lose a person in the opposite direction. Outside of that, all these symbols underneath here are very important for you to keep an eye on. They're pretty straightforward and integral into the game, but just keep in mind, these are going to be flipping your tokens every time you cycle beyond a death symbol, every time you re-flip a token back to its regular, normal side, you are going to be killing someone, and each of these two little meeple locations are going to be indicative of meeples who cannot go out to work. They have pneumonia, you have to place down a zone in your storage, and they're going to occupy that for the rest of the turn. So the higher you get on here, the more punishing it's going to be.
So the one thing I want to talk about is terminology to back on that side as well. There's something called curing and there's something called treating.
Yeah.
Those are two very different things, and sometimes the terminology can be confusing. So curing someone does not mean that you're necessarily making them well. Sort of.
You're curing their whole being.
Correct. So now they're technically not sick anymore. So you're reducing the number of sick people that are totally within your zone.
It's like taking someone that has a bad cold and helping them get over the bad cold. You don't really call a cold a disease or a sickness. Right? You say, I got a cold.
And you're generally curing more than one person. Yeah. So when you think of curing, you're curing like a community rather than just generally one person.
But when you're talking about treating that's
you're treating
one guy. Pneumonia specifically. It's when this is flipped over to a skull location.
So you can now treat that person and flip it back over to their sick side. So you didn't cure them, but you treated them to make them less deadly ill now.
It keeps them from dying, which is an important thing to keep in mind. And the balance of this is a whole nother thing we could talk about.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I think the last thing I have on my list, and then we'll check in for any of the last ones that you have, is going to deal with the actual adventuring. So at the start of the game, you're going to have 3 A locations down here on the tableau. When you start adventuring, the common practice is going to be to take a unit, place it down here at this beginning zone, and then during the weather phase, you're going to push up until you reach one of your destinations. When you reach this destination, you have a few choices. First off, let's say the weather said I was moving 4 total spaces. Right now, I would be counting 1, 2, 3, meaning I have 1 total space left over. If I don't want to waste that movement, I want to continue rushing forward, I can choose to not flip this card over. I can skip this location, placing down a card on top of that location. You see the little overlap there, and then continuing to my movement of 4. However, this is usually not the most advantageous action unless you're rushing for something specifically. Usually, what you will most commonly do is pause here at the ruins or the campsite or wherever you've arrived to. You will flip this card over, you will take a look at it, and then you'll see whether or not it has a forced return or a continue on. Usually it'll have an option that involves both. If you do the continue on, if you do the return, you're going to take whatever resources you have and bring them directly back to camp. You're then going to be placing out a B card, and I'll show you how in just a second. If you do the carry on, and this is where this gets important, you lose your movement. So if I stopped at this location, I decided to carry on, I would get whatever resources. Let's say it was 2 wood, I'd place that down next to him. Then I would place the B card on top of that location, and I would stop there on top of that location. I stopped at the camp. I am not moving any farther until another weather phase happens. That means you did lose 1 movement compared to what you would have gotten if you had skipped forward. Now, if I decided to return home, a B card still comes out. The consequence of that is this card is going to overlap all but the very last, the very beginning part of the A card. Meaning the next time you go on a journey, you do know the terrain fairly well, so you can get there quicker, but you still be starting technically on the bottom of that A card and then progressing forward onto the B. This is going to continue like this through B to C, and then finally at your C, you'll be indicated to restart with another A card for the most part. Always follow the rules and double check the cards and look for the little keywords and clues. But that is the general breakdown of how this works. There are other things that change this math. There are upgrades and abilities. Double check the keywords, double check the conditions. For the most part, it's going to be following this type of structure. Okay.
Okay, we're going to try to do this one.
Okay, great.
I feel like this is one of the most unique, different things and can be one of the hardest things to understand.
Just to be clear, we are right now saying West still might be wrong about this.
Yeah, so I'm going to also reference the rules because I'm pretty sure that I'm correct, but I want to just double check on a few, 1, 2, or 3 things because it is a little intricate.
We are like 50 hours
some hours into playing this game.
Yeah, so we're not new flocks to this pigeon.
Yes. So if you are told to deactivate either a hope or a discontent, then you will just, and it doesn't give you a specific thing. Like it doesn't say deactivate anger, deactivate care. It just says deactivate hope, deactivate discontent. Then you will just flip any random one over. It doesn't matter. You can flip any one that you want over. Okay. If it says to activate discontent or hope, then you will flip one over, as long as it doesn't specifically say which one to do. Now, if there's a situation where it says activate, say,
pestilence.
If it says activate care, for instance, care is already activated, you don't have a deactivated one, that means you cannot do it, so you will just pretend that it's not there.
And that doesn't give you permission to do something that is not care.
Correct. You cannot activate this one, which is motivation, just because you felt great about it and were like, hey, I want to activate this instead of care. No, I'm sorry, you can't. It has to be care. Same thing with the discontent. If there's any of those that it says you want to activate and
or
you can't.
Deactivate.
Or deactivate. Yeah, either way. Now, here's where it gets a little bit more challenging. If it says to add a hope or to add a discontent, then you will draw one from the bag, okay? So you would just be drawing a hope or drawing a discontent from the bag, okay? So increase. You'll be increasing a hope or you're increasing a discontent.
Does it come out on the faded side?
It comes out on the on the deactivated side, okay. Yes. On the deactivated side. Now, if it says that ask you to do a specific one, okay, so it says activate care, okay, or add care. Then you're going to go through, if you don't have a care here to deal with, then you can draw a care. And if it's not a care, then you won't be able to activate it. So that's fine, that's care, so you draw the right one. So you're good. So again, very clearly.
If it is care, do you activate it when it comes out?
If it says increase your hope, like say increase care, then you're going to draw a random token and then you're going to activate that token because it's asking you to increase care, so you're supposed to activate it. But if for some reason you don't have a care here, you're always going to draw one because you're increasing your hope, and then it would say that you're supposed to be activating that care. That's where it gets a little confusing.
Because you have a difference between
increase versus activate.
And add. Increase, add, and activate.
Yes, those are the three things that get a little bit squirrely. There's a wonderful player
Activate
aid.
means flip. Add means draw from the bag and place on.
Correct.
Increase means draw from the bag, place on, and possibly flip.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So here in this particular situation, the social advisor, it goes over all these rules. I highly recommend holding this one handy because this sometime, to me, was the most confusing. But it does make sense once you understand it. But I'm still trying to understand it fully, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Cool. Is that your...
That was my final one.
That's our list?
That's my list.
I actually had one more.
Oh, great.
Worth mentioning, just very right off the bat, when you're enacting policies, some of them will block other policies. For instance, up here, and some of them, because of the artwork, it's a little bit hard to see. Up here in the top right corner, you will see we're Xing out LO1, meaning that because we have a child shelter, we cannot do the card LO1, which is going to be child labor. Both of those things do not exist in a society. Now, on top of that, you're going to be down here taking, where is it? Where's the set of cards you take for this?
They're in the dusk pile.
Yeah, so you're going to be taking a set of cards and enacting or adding the consequence of that action. And those are going to match with... well, you grabbed me the LO1s, but...
yeah, sorry.
Those are going to be matching with the bottom icon here. So this is a card LO2. So you will take the dusk cards from that policy that you enacted, shuffle these two together, because there's always two of them, and add one into the consequence deck, or into the dust deck.
Correct.
That means there is a strong chance you won't know exactly what the... pro or con of what you have done for your society is going to be until you come across it in the future.
True.
Now, is that everything?
I think so.
There we have it. That's our general overview. We have been playing this game and getting our mind wrapped around it. Those are the things we have struggled with, the stuff we've had to double check the rulebook on, we've had to get clarification on, and we probably just, expecting the inevitable, said something slightly off kilter or didn't quite get the terminology right. The reality is there's a lot of levers here in this game. We are really, really enjoying playing into it, and we want to help you have that experience. So take everything in the grain of what we said, but double check these rules for yourself when you come across them. That's the main goal of this video, to put them in your mind, to remember that I need to double check what happens when my sickness status crosses my population, or I need to be aware that when I enact a policy, I know there's some cards somewhere that get placed somewhere into other decks.
Yes.
That is enough. That is a successful video in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So, whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Enact child labor. Do it.
Please.
I mean, not
These
just
children are
as
just sitting around.
Policy within the game, but I'm not even opposed to like lowering the minimum, possible age for work. Yeah. I think 8-year-olds could be back in the mines.
I mean, yeah.
I didn't say they should. I want to clear.
They could be.
Could be back in the mines. I'm not advocating for them to be.
I've known a lot of great 8-year-olds that have been extremely wonderful farmhands.
Like I was saying they should be. I wasn't saying
not
that.
Should.
No,
you didn't say should. Could. It's the same like.
Don't leave the angry comments. No, I wasn't saying that your lovely, precious children should work. I just think they could use a little bit more responsibility and discipline.
I mean, don't we all need a little extra spending money too? That's really why we had children.
They're very expensive, and the earlier you can get them starting to pay back what they owe to you and society, the better you're going to be. And at the end of the day, isn't that why we all have children? For our own benefit?
I really did have children so that I wouldn't have to do as many chores. It has not worked out for me so far. I've done more chores now than I've ever done in my whole life.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not going to work out till you're like 80.
I hope they change my diaper someday.
Yeah,
I feel like that'll be
vengeance.
I feel like that'll be like poetic justice.
You're gonna have to just wear a diaper one day
and just be like, change me.
I'm not getting out of this. And they'll be like, Dad, you smell. It's been 2.5 weeks. And you'll be like, damn it,
change me.
That's gross.
It's very gross.
It's very gross.
Especially if you have hair like on your legs and stuff. or potentially on your derriere.
I don't want to change anyone's diapers.
Me either.
Shear's an expert. She's changed thousands of diapers.
Yeah.
She's an EQ nurse, if you don't know.
Yeah.
She's going to put me to shame. I've never changed a diaper. She's changed thousands. She is going to, and I know this, spitefully hand me a baby. Our baby, hopefully. Not a random baby.
I mean, it might be some random baby at some point.
She's going to spitefully hand me a baby. She's going to go, it needs changed. And then she's going to, because she knows she has it handled. Whatever I do, she's good, right?
Yep.
And she understands how just durable these little monsters are.
Right.
Like, you can just bang them around, twist them up in knots. Like, they're fine. She gets it.
Rubber bones.
So she's just going to stand there like this and go, he needs changed. And then watch. I know for a fact that's going to happen.
I have no doubt whatsoever. And I bet her thousands is probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of, because I know personally, I have changed thousands of diapers, and I'm not a NICU nurse.
Yeah, but you have multiple children through. She's like been a professional NICU nurse, but not for 10 years.
Okay, fair.
Right? For like 3.
Okay, probably still thousands at least.
Thousands of diapers.
Definitely thousands.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
You know, and she's working with these little tiny things that like do apparently very odd goopy poops. But you have to be skilled. You have to be able to like lift it with one hand, like swap with another hand, and then set it back down with like a bunch of like
cords and all that stuff. Yeah, that's true. That is a skillful change.
They're very annoying, I've heard. They're constantly trying to just... No, the babies. They're constantly trying to just, like, leave the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they thinking?
It's very irresponsible. It's very irresponsible.
Very.
All right, thanks for watching. It's been a Quackalope video. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.